now, please welcome Deputy Secretary of State for Management and Resources for the U.S. Department of State, Richard Verma, in discussion with Skift CEO and founder, Rafat Ali.
Okay, it is our distinct honor to have the Deputy Secretary of State, Rich Verma, who you are the first government speaker we've had at the Skift Global Forum.
That's kind of scary. I'm not sure what to make of it. No, it's great to be here. Thank you for having us.
Of course, thank you for coming. And over the last few years, we at Skift have developed a good relationship with the State Department. I think what we in the travel industry know the State Department for is visas and passports. That's sort of our purview into the State Department. Give a sense of how the private sector, which is primarily what's here, should think of the purview of the State Department as it comes to travel.
Thank you again for having us. And sure, this is really, I think, an important question because a lot of people don't understand the State Department. So just as a reminder, we are 80,000 people. We are in 273 locations around the world. Of that 80,000, about 14,000 Foreign Service officers, 50,000 locally employed staff that work at our embassies and consulates, and 14,000 civil servants. That's our workforce. We have a budget of about $60 billion, which sounds like a lot. It is 0.5% of our federal budget. So we do a lot for American citizens around the world. So obviously, passport issuance, obviously visas that we issue around the world. But when I think about our interaction with the private sector, it is significant. It is in every sphere in which we operate. You know, we can only set the rules of the road. We can do the diplomacy, but we partner with the private sector in almost every element of what we do, whether it's in climate change or in cybersecurity, in our work on agriculture, in global health. You know, you are all out doing the work. Now, the travel industry, I think we have a great relationship with the travel industry. We hear from you on a regular basis. Thank you.
Sometimes they're angry at you.
Sometimes they're angry. We understand. But a lot of times we're trying to solve problems together. We are trying to actually respond to this incredible demand we have, both for outbound travel and for people wanting to come here to the United States. And we have a good problem on our hands, which is more people want to travel than ever before. More people have a passport than ever before. If you go back to the year 1990, 5% of American citizens had a passport. That number today is around 52%.
Yeah, which is people, by the way, when you talk to people in the rest of the world, they still think we're stuck at like 5%. But we are 58, you said
52%. Yeah.
And rising.
And rising. And so this is a big focus for us. And we want to make the customer experience a good one. And we're trying to respond to that incredible demand. We have increased our hiring. We have brought on experts who specialize in customer experience and change management. We have introduced new technologies. We have improved our website. We have opened new passport offices in 6 cities, from Salt Lake City to Charlotte to San Antonio and more. So we are trying to keep up with the demand.
You have some breaking news tonight.
We also have breaking.
Can we pull up this slide? There's some breaking news tonight.
There is breaking news. For the last few months, we have offered a beta program to renew your passport online. And about 200,000 people have actually taken part in that program. Tomorrow, online passport renewal will go live for the first time ever for the entire country.
Wow. By the way, this link is not working tonight. This will work tomorrow morning.
No, but this is a really big deal. And again, the feedback we've gotten has been really positive. We think in the not too distant future, nearly 50% of renewals of Passport could be done online. But we're going to take this step by step. We've been working closely with the best kind of technology companies in the country to make sure the back end of this operation is working seamlessly. And so far it is. Now,
the process is what? You go, so your passport is expiring, you go online, you enter your details, verification. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you've got it exactly right. So this will be a digitized application. Your photo you can do, on your phone. Your payment will be digitized. It won't necessarily be faster, right? We're still, and I should have mentioned, we are, on wait times for passports, we are back to pre-pandemic levels, 6 to 8 weeks for regular service, 2 to 3 weeks for expedited service, and that will continue to be the case even through the online platform. But the ease of doing it and the customer experience hopefully will be much better. People should go online to see if you qualify. You have to be located here in the United States, not abroad. You have to have had a passport that was valid for 10 years. You cannot have a passport that was expired for more than 5 years. So there's some details that you want to make sure you actually qualify for, but we think it's going to be enormously positive experience for people.
How do you, and so as the Deputy Secretary of State, you're also effectively the COO of the State Department. Your agenda, you started in April last year, so it's been, what, a year and a half now at this point almost. How do you, so these wait times that are there for passport and visa, I have 8 employees in India. India is the biggest delays, I guess, and one of the biggest delays, but you've cut it down. It's still quite a bit.
Let me talk a little bit about visas, because this has also gotten a huge amount of attention, again, primarily during the pandemic and then the wait times that came up. But just something I think everybody in this room knows, that international visitors to the United States are an essential part of the U.S. economy. $240 billion annually is what we project international visitors contribute to the U.S. economy, supporting 10 million jobs in the United States. Last year, we had about 67 million visitors to the U.S., and these are all record numbers. Now, not everyone who travels here needs a visa to travel. In fact, we've got Canada and some 40 countries or so that have visa-free travel. Just in the first 3 quarters of this fiscal year, we issued 8 million visas. That is a record. Fiscal year is coming up at the end of September. We'll see what the numbers bring. But the numbers are off the charts. Again, a good problem to have. In terms of wait times, we are back to pre-pandemic wait times in every visa category except one: first-time visitor visa applicants to the United States, but only in a handful of countries. Right. Countries that matter, obviously: Mexico, Brazil, Colombia, India. We still have some wait times that are too high. The volume has been incredible,
which is a great thing.
Which is a great thing, and we're looking at every tool. But also remember, the State Department, as much as we are facilitating travel, we are also a national security agency.
Right.
And there are bad actors out there, there are bad governments out there, there are people trying to create fraud in the system. Frankly, there are bad actors that want to do harm to U.S. interests. And we've also got to be serious about how we treat our processes. Now, we've worked very closely with the Department of Homeland Security to try to make sure we are focused in on the right groups of people. In other words, if we can waive the interview for categories of people, we should do that. And I believe the number is around 40% of applicants now don't require an interview. So that is a good development. We've also tried to do some other creative steps. For example, if you are a skilled worker here on an H-1B visa, it used to be that you would have to leave the country and come back in to get your visa renewed. For certain categories of H-1Bs now, the highly skilled workers, we've allowed people to stay, apply here. We did about 6,000 cases last year. That saved about $10,000 per worker. That impacted 2,400 companies in 40 states. So again, an important change that has a big difference. We are looking at possibly a digital visa instead of having people come in and actually stamp their visa in their passport. This is under testing right now. And so we are looking at, again, trying to create as many innovations as we can to make this experience for people a good experience. I will tell you, again, this is personal to me.
Yeah, you were telling me the story.
Yeah, no, my dad came to this country in 1963. Tells a great immigrant story like so many others. Reminds us that he showed up here in New York City with $14 and a bus ticket. Heard that story so many times. Sometimes he had $22, sometimes he had $14, but you get the point. He started over with really next to nothing. But he reminds me that he waited in the visa line at the US Embassy in New Delhi. His family drove about 200 miles from Punjab. They made him buy a new suit. They made him practice for the questions he was getting. The entire family was super nervous. This was the first kid that would go and travel. This was the first kid, frankly, to ever go to college. Came here on a Ford Foundation fellowship, and the rest, as they say, is history. His kid gets to go back a generation later as the U.S. ambassador to India. That is the long shot of long shots.
And you were the first Indian origin ambassador.
I was, and it's a very American story. It's the American dream. And I remembered that so clearly that I would often go out to the visa line and I would talk to people in the visa line because, again, 60 years later, here they were, driving hundreds of miles, super nervous, super concerned about how this would turn out. But we try to show that understanding and empathy, and again, try to make the experience a good one. In this job I've been in for the last 18 months, I've been to 65 embassies and consulates in that time. I am perpetually jet lagged, but it's okay. And I always go to the consular section, and I always check in with our team that does an amazing job. And oftentimes, they will take me up to the visa window where I will hear the interview take place. In Juarez, Mexico, they actually had me administer the actual questions to an applicant, which I was really hoping this would turn out well for the applicant. Thankfully, he got his visa. So we've talked about passports and visas, but remember, our consular team is also responding to emergencies around the world, which, again, all of you have to deal with in the travel industry. It could be a humanitarian disaster. It could be a tornado or hurricane, an earthquake. It could be a family situation. It could be a serious health issue. It could be an arrest. It could be a wrongful detention. All of us who are involved in travel and moving Americans back and forth, or frankly, anyone, you need somewhere to turn for help. And most of the time, people pick up the phone and they call the consulate and they call the embassy. And I'm so proud and inspired by our team to see what they do for Americans around the world and for others that need help. People always ask me, so what do you see when you travel around the world? You see a lot of conflict, you see war, was in Ukraine last week, Been multiple trips to the Middle East. But I really do come back from those trips incredibly inspired by the team of Americans we have working in partnership with all of you.
When the role of embassies, I talked to the current U.S. ambassador, Eric Garcetti, at our Skift India Summit earlier this year, and he's very focused, among many things, on promoting tourism between the two countries, but also being the ambassador in the literal sense, in the figurative sense, of promoting America to Indians there. So how much of your instruction or is the embassies themselves become ambassadors, so to speak, to promote American tourism to U.S.?
100%. I mean,
besides the visa and passport facilitation.
It's interesting. When you're U.S. ambassador, you don't actually, there isn't really a job description, right? You show up with a letter from the president, you hand it to the head of state. And so you've got to construct it depending on what the situation is on the ground. So for me, India is a huge commercial trading partner for the United States, a huge source of visitors.
Of tourism. These are the numbers that we're showing. India is the fastest growing in U.S.
And I will say what's not shown there, I don't think, is now India has the most students studying in the United States as well, or has overtaken China. So yes, public diplomacy, being out in the country, talking about the United States. Some of the hardest moments I had were when people had a bad experience coming into a port of entry. They were detained. They didn't make it through. Frankly,
this is here in the U.S. when they
here in the U.S. And I took that very personally. We had a funny, not so funny moment now that I think about it when literally the most famous actor in the world,
yes, I remember that.
Shah Rukh Khan, was detained at LAX mistakenly. And he tweeted, "I'm here detained," and I tweeted back like, "Hey, sorry about that. We'll." My Twitter followers went from like 20,000 to 200,000 overnight when you tweet with the world's most famous.
You all know Shah Rukh Khan, right?
Yeah.
Only the most famous actor on the planet.
Anyway,
if you don't know,
you need to be a little bit in the Bollywood sphere, but we take that again. We want to make the experience a good experience. We learn from situations like that, and again, we try to balance the security aspects with the trade and the travel and tourism aspects, which again we know are so important to the U.S. economy.
And you don't fully have control over the immigration experience because DHS does a lot of that as well.
Yeah, and remember, a visa is not a guarantee to come into the United States. My DHS friends always remind me of that you still have to navigate the questions you may or may not get at your port of entry, wherever that is. But again, we've had enormous cooperation from our DHS colleagues.
I mean,
it's improved, and they have a very difficult job.
The airports are getting better.
We work together very closely, but again, it's a challenging job. I think about some of what's coming up in the next few years for the United States, and again, Ambassador Garcetti's really been working on this with making cricket a big thing.
So we're gonna that was gonna be the next question for you. For you, very focused on bringing these big events, particularly sports events, to U.S. They've become economic engines around the world for different countries to bid on these things, and U.S. happens to have all of them at the same time, or in a time frame.
If you think about the next 10 years, we'll have the FIFA World Cup. We will have the Summer Olympics in Los Angeles. We will have the Winter Olympics in Salt Lake City. And there's many, many other events in between that. I noted some of the big ones. And so not only do you have to get the travel authorized of the players and the coaches and the staff, but think about the thousands, if not millions, of fans that want to follow those teams or those players to the United States. And so we are already working today with FIFA, with the Olympic Committee to make sure that experience, again, is a good experience, especially for the players. A lot of the players are going to be coming from countries where you would ordinarily not necessarily be approved for a visa. But because they are coming as part of a sports team, it's a very different process, and we want to treat that, again, as a very positive experience. I just had the really good fortune to go to the Little League World Series in Williamsport, Pennsylvania a couple weeks ago. This is the really fun part of my job. And they invited us because we had brought teams. Our consular folks, our embassy folks had worked with dozens of teams across the country, across the world, from Venezuela to Cuba, Korea, Chinese Taipei. There were a lot of challenges in bringing all those teams to Williamsport and having them there for 3 weeks. But it was really one of the best experiences I've ever had to see those young kids living on the campus there in Williamsport, meeting each other, making these lifelong friendships. And I don't know if any of you saw the game, but it was a really dramatic game. The team from Taiwan ended up losing in extra innings, and it was such a close game and so hardly fought. The Taiwanese players were out in the field crying, quite emotional. The coaches were crying. And our team from Florida, before they went out and celebrated or did anything, they went over to the other players and hugged them, consoled them. And it just made me think there's a lot of good in the world. Sports, diplomacy, art, music, diplomacy. These are how we bring people together, and especially in a world that's so fractured and divided and politicized. So much of what all of you are trying to do is bring people together, and we see that on a daily basis, and it's really positive.
I don't know if you know this, there's a Music Tourism Act that's been introduced. I don't fully remember the details, but we did a story on it, which is to promote music tourism in obviously iconic bands. This is America, the cultural capital of the world in many ways. And so there's a Music Tourism Act being passed through the Congress right now to build on that.
To enhance music diplomacy. My boss is actually a really good guitar player. So you see the Secretary of State out, again, reaching people that ordinarily may or may not be interested in what the State Department does. But again, music is a great way to reach people, and it's events like that, whether it's a big concert or a sporting event, we really, really want to be supportive of those.
Let me ask you a blue sky question. How far are we away from passports on our phones?
Well, it's interesting. I don't think we're that far away, and in fact, I think Google had rolled out
they announced last week.
A product. Again, this is where we're going to need really good coordination with TSA, with other international partners.
By the way, the TSA commissioner is speaking tomorrow.
It's a good question to ask him, how he feels about passports on phones. Again, we have enough challenges on the paper passports, right, in terms of fraud and other issues. So we just want to be careful that we are, yes, enhancing your experience, but we haven't somehow compromised security. in the process. And I think but obviously, this is where technology is moving, and we want to try to keep up with the technology, and again, make that customer experience as good. Look, most people in the world, their only contact with the State Department will either be getting a passport or a visa.
Yeah.
A lot of us get to go to these summits and do diplomacy and go to conferences and sit down with foreign ministers. But the real diplomacy takes place at that visa window. It takes place, that customer experience when they come and they pick up their passport. And again, that is probably
the... Do you use the word customer experience? Because you don't think of government and customer experience.
Well, I think of our consular section, and I think of customer experience. And I think they take it quite seriously, and we take the feedback quite seriously. We are here today because we want to hear from all of you about what's working and what's not working. And again, we are trying to do the best we can, frankly, in a world that is pretty complicated because we have a big diplomatic and security mission too. but promoting travel, making travel, facilitating travel for a range of purposes, business, personal, emergency. We're also there to support that as well.
The news that we posted last week was that the State Department tied up with, or maybe it was DHS, tied up with Google so that on the Android phones you can store your passport, I don't know, I'm trying to remember the details, on your phone. It's not yet on iPhone. I guess that's a separate deal with Apple. Security is a huge issue, so you have to figure out what the steps are. I'd be interested to find out. I don't know the full detail. I don't remember the full details, but I guess you cannot travel abroad with just a digital copy, but it's at least a start.
It's a start. I'd be careful about just going straight to saying you've got your passport on your phone. So,
yeah. Well, thank you, Deputy Secretary. That was great. Thank you for coming again, and we hope to continue to talk to the State Department.
Thank you.